Alright, for the many of you that were gone first hour, here's a video. This is going to be very quick and abbreviated, but you need to watch it a couple times and make sure you have the homework done and are ready for tomorrow. So we're going to do three things. We're going to find the zeros of a quadratic, the axis of symmetry, and the vertex. We'll skip some of this. Basically, the bottom line, the zero of a function is an x value that makes the function equal to 0, hence the name. So basically, if you had an equation, y equals 3x squared minus 2x minus 5, and you plugged in something for x, whatever it would be, and the answer came out to be 0, that would be a zero of a function. So if we pictured that, if I plug something in for x, and the answer comes out to be 0, well, that would be like if x was 2, it'd be over 2 up 0, or something like that, or back 5 up 0. So the zeros of the function are basically just the x-intercepts, or where it crosses the x-axis. So it's the zero of a function is the point where the graph crosses the x-axis. So when you're trying to find the zeros, you look at the graph, you see where it crosses, and those are your zeros. Now there's three scenarios. You could have 2, which would be this picture right here. That'd be a 0, that would be a 0. You could have 1, which would be this picture right here. It would look like that. Or you could have none, which would be this picture right here if it was just floating right there, because it doesn't cross at all. And when you find the zeros, you're always going to write them as an ordered pair. So right here, if we look at this, my 0 is over 3 up 0, and right here, back 1 up 0. Now if you wanted to check your answers, now I understand you don't need to check your answers here because it's very obvious, but if it wasn't so obvious and you wanted to check, you'd plug it into the equation and see if it really did equal 0. So if I plug in -1, -1 times -1 is 1, -1 times -2 is +2, and then I have a -3, and that does equal 0. Plug in 3 times 3 is 9, 3 times 2 is -6, -3, and that does equal 0. So those are the zeros of the function. This one here, you can see it only has one 0, which would be right here at -4, 0. Right there you have none. Make sure you write none. Do not write 0, because if you write 0, I'm going to think you're talking about that. So those are the zeros of the function. That's how you find them. Okay, next thing you're going to find is the axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry is the vertical line that divides the parabola into two equal halves, and it's always going to run through the vertex of the parabola. So, for example, everything in this chapter is going to be a U. So if I have this going on, the vertex is exactly in the middle. Your axis of symmetry is this dotted line that's going to chop that in half. And your axis of symmetry always is going to be x equals something. So like right here, let's say it's x equals 4. So this is how you're going to write it. It's going to be a line. Sometimes it's super easy. You just look and you can tell right there it's at -1. So x equals -1. If you can't tell, and right here we could figure it out if we looked hard enough. If this is 1, it's going to be about right here. But it's going to split the graph exactly in half, which means it's going to fall exactly between these two dots because it has to be perfectly in the middle. So if you can't tell where that is, take those two dots, that's at 1, that's at 4, add them up and divide them in 2, and you'll get the middle. So that's just a backup for me. Okay? If the function has no zeros, so it's sitting here, it's floating up above, you don't really know where it's at, it's pretty hard to tell. You can't really find the axis of symmetry too easy because you don't know exactly where it is. So we have a formula that we're going to give you. And that formula is this right here. Come on. This is what you need to write on your paper. Axis of symmetry equals this. Now, we're going to say opposite of b over 2a, opposite of b over 2a, opposite of b over 2a, which means no matter what b is, you take the opposite. So even if it's a negative number, what's a negative negative? It's a positive, so you flip it to a positive. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to make sure it's in standard form. And if it is in standard form, then you find your a, your b, and your c. Your a is always just your first number. your B is your second number, your C is your third number. So your A in this case is -3, your B is 10. So opposite of B, it's a positive 10, opposite of B is going to be -10 over 2, don't forget the 2, because people forget that because it's always there, A, which is -3. So I've got -10 over -6. Negative over negative is a positive. I reduce my fraction and I got 5/3. X equals 5/3. So it's kind of nice because you didn't have to graph this, and even if you did graph it, you wouldn't be able to spot this very easily on the graph. So right here, this is in standard form. My B value here would be a 1, so opposite of B would be -1 over 2 times A would be 2. So my axis of symmetry is at -1/4. I would pause it and try the next one quick. It is in standard form. Here's my B value. Opposite of that's going to be +5 over 2 times A. It's going to be 5 over 12. And I should be writing X equals. It's X equals. Those are your answers. Okay, one more thing to do. That is to find the vertex. So here's the deal. If we find the axis of symmetry, so I have this floating out here. The axis of symmetry is this dotted line. It's X equals something. Well, it's always going to go through this dot. So if I know the axis of symmetry is X equals 2, and I want to get that dot, if I know that X equals 2, I could plug 2 into my equation to get my Y value, and that will give me the vertex. So right now we're finding the vertex. So the first thing you're going to do, this is what I would write in your notes. I'd write step 1, find the axis of symmetry, X equals. Step 2, plug it into equation to get Y. And then step 3, write it as X comma Y. So find your axis of symmetry. So it is in standard form. So axis of symmetry opposite of B is -6 over 2 times A is -3, which means this is -6 over -6, which means it's 1. So I have X equals 1. So if X equals 1 and I want to get my Y value, I plug it into the equation. So I've got -3 times 1 squared plus 6 times 1 minus 7. Don't forget to follow Aunt Sally. You got to do exponents first. So 1 times 1 is 1 times -3 plus 6 minus 7 is -4. So your axis of symmetry is 1, -4. And last, do this problem. This was the one you had to do to get your homework, so do that one quick, pause it, and come back. So here's the answer. Opposite of B, opposite of this is a +4 over 2 times A is going to be a 1, which means that 4 over 2 equals 2. So if X is 2, then I plug that in. If I plug it in here, 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 4 is 8 minus 10. So 4 minus 8 minus 10 is -14. So my point is, oh, I lied. My point is 2, -14. There you go. Watch it a couple times. Have your homework ready to go. See ya.